understand. It's her face! Her face! Her terrible face!
What's that noise?
Can't be. Liv, run!
You're Helen Sinclair, language scholar, British Museum.
You know my work?
No, I read the sign on the door. But that doesn't matter. Helen, this tablet is vital to the safety of the cosmos.
The man calls himself the Doctor.
What? Is he here?
Galileo, how good to see you again.
Commence dissection.
What? Save me! They're coming!
Liv Shaker. She's right here.
Where will this contraption take us?
To the end of the line, Mr. Payne. To the end of the line.
Let's give the Doctor the welcome he so richly deserves.
Hello and welcome YouTubers and Doctor Who fanatics to another Big Finish audio review, and today I'll be taking a look at a much anticipated Big Finish release which came out October 2015. Not only is it more 8th Doctor goodness, but this is a new series for him, a fresh start as the Dark Eye series has concluded this year, and now I have a new series of 4 box set releases, Doom Coalition, which stars Paul McGann as the brilliant 8th Doctor, which we all know and love, Nicola Walker playing Liv, which was from the Dark Eye series, making her debut in The Traitor, but her first Big Finish was Robophobia, Haiti Mohan, who's playing a new companion, which is Helen Sinclair, and Mark Bonner playing the villain of the release, which is the 11. So if you want to go straight to my review of Doom Coalition and want to see how this audio is showcased, then there is the time to the review. If you haven't skipped, then let's begin the video. So for the front box art we have the 8th Doctor by there, then we have the 11, which I think he has the Regeneration Codex in his hand, with Helen Sinclair and Liv. We have a jail cell in the background and by there. We have bits of Gallifreyan symbols and the seal of Rassilon, with the sun in the background, some smoke, and we have Phaeton in the background. And with the standard stuff showcasing the main cast featuring the story, the Doctor Who logo, Doom Coalition 1, I would personally just remove the 1, and we have Big Finish We Love Stories down by there. To the top of the set, which looks really nice, we have the sun by there, some Gallifreyan symbols, the seal of Rassilon Kraken, with the 8th Doctor, Doctor Who, Doom Coalition, we have the 11 and Earth in the background. And for the bottom we have the running time, which is 300 minutes approx, including music score, which is very nice, and behind the scenes track. And we have some other bits of information by there as well. And for the side of the box set, what it looks like on your shelf, we have the Doctor Who logo, Doom Coalition, a picture of the 11, a big number 1 by there, and the Big Finish logo. Also have the seal of Rassilon by there as well, and the planet Phaeton. And for the back, showcasing the main cast and the story, and then all the stories featuring the set, which is the 11 by Matt Fitton, the Red Lady by John Dorney, the Galileo Trap by Mark Platt, and the Satanic Mill by Edward Collier, new Big Finish writer. Directed by Ken Badley, with the bio on each of the stories, which I'll place in the description, and Big Finish We Love Story. And for the sides of all the single releases, we had the picture, and it does correspond with the front cover's colour and with the text, so I do like that. It's following the same page as Dark Eyes 4, then we had the numbering and the Big Finish logo. So that was Doom Coalition box set showcase. Now I'll showcase the individual stories, then to the review. First story off the set, it is the 11 by Matt Fitton. We have the 8th Doctor by there, Liv, the 11th, Gallifreyan symbols all around, with the Regeneration Codex and laser fire. The back of the CD is showcased all like this, with the title of the story written and directed by. It's a different design than usual, they changed it a little bit. Then they have the cover of the story, the bio, and then the cast list and the running time. And then for the inside we have the leaflet and the disc. If we take the disc out, it will showcase the Dark Eye series, so pick it up if you want to. But if you haven't got the Dark Eye series and you're thinking about getting Doom Coalition, you don't have to get Dark Eyes to get into Doom Coalition. Next up is the Red Lady with the 8th Doctor, Helen Sinclair, which is an introduction story, some nice text by there which looks really nice. You have the Red Lady by there. And in the background, that's where the story is set, with more Gallifreyan symbols. Also nice it interferes with this, because not all covers actually do that. For the back, it's the same how the 11 is showcased. And for inside, we had the booklet and the disc, which is the leaflet. And it advertises Unit Extinction. Next up it is the Galileo Trap, and it's my favourite cover out of the set, We have the 8th Doctor, Galileo, Gallifreyan symbols around. We have the main villain of the story, and the 2 dogs, which I believe it's Heracles and Brutus. If my memory serves me correctly, I hope it is. And we have the planet in the background, which will go into the Satanic Mill, which is Fitton. For the back, this is how the Galileo Trap is showcased. And for inside the Galileo Trap, we take the disc out and advertises Classic Doctors, New Monsters. We still haven't really got a confirmed release date. I think it's just a placeholder, December 2016. I think it'll come out the same time as the 10th Doctor Adventures, maybe May, June, April, somewhere around there, I'm guessing. And in the final story of the set, The Satanic Mill by Edward Collier, we have the 11, which is the exact same picture as the front cover. And I forgot to say the Galileo Trap is the same Paul McGann 8th Doctor picture, just slanted differently. So yeah, they do reuse pictures quite a lot. But anyway, I'm not going to moan about that. There's some nice Gallifreyan symbols again, electricity, the sun, and Phaeton in the background. And we can sort of see the Satanic Mill, or the satellite interior in the background. To the back of the Satanic Mill, this is how it's showcased. And for inside, we have production credits, and there's a 2-disc. This one is with the story itself, and behind the scenes. And we have Doom Coalition 2, which will come out March 2016. So that was Doom Coalition Showcase. Now let's move into my review, starting with the 11 by Matt Fitton.
Eviscerated armies, incinerated worlds.
The massacre on Beltram 9, for instance, was that provoked by...
The screams of 10,000 souls dying in agony. I wanted to know how it sounded. Next question.
Now to my review of the 11 by Matt Fitton, and wow, has this writer been on a roll with his stories. Stage Fright from the Last Adventure is unbelievably good, and it's my favourite from the set, without a shadow of a doubt. And Crisscross and the Mercury Rangers is also a really good 6th Doctor story, puts so much research and so much heart and passion into the script, and I was fully optimistic that he would pull this one off as well. And also furthermore, he's writing the final story in the Doom Coalition 2 set, and the writers are Nicholas Briggs, John Dorney, Mark Platt, and Matt Fitton. Edward Collier stepping out now, and Nicholas Briggs is going into the set now. And I'm very happy to see Matt Fitton writing the final story, as he's proved that he's got talent, he's been on a roll, and I have full faith he will pull off the final story. Because sometimes with box sets, and it feels so underwhelming when box set does this, it's when the final story within the set is underwhelming, it doesn't hit expectations. You have so much build up in the first 3 stories, and then you have a complete underwhelming mess during the end. It's like trying for Sutek a little bit, and it really diminishes the actual rating of the entire set when the final story is not very good. But Matt Fitton, I don't believe for a minute that he would step into those shoes. He will deliver us a satisfying end, so I'm happy that Matt Fitton is writing the final story for Doom 2. So to the summary of this story, it introduces us to a new Time Lord villain known simply as the 11, and I've got to say straight away, he is one of the most best Doctor Who Big Finish villains ever come out with. I just love the concept of the 11. He keeps all his regenerations with him, and it's like a form of insanity. You can have all these voices of his different incarnations, the 1, the 4, the 7, all in his head, and he becomes completely mental, over the top, he can't control himself. So yeah, it's a very rare case of Time Lord insanity. And yeah, the 11 was put into custody by the 7th Doctor, and we have a nice prologue scene during the start, which I very like a lot, where the 7th Doctor imprisons the 11 in frozen animation. So that was the brief opening summary of the 11. Now let's begin my in-depth review, then characters and performances, overall verdict on the story, conclusion, then move on to the next story, and then when I've done all that, rank all the stories from weakest to best, in my opinion, and then the overall verdict on the box set, and then close off the video. That's how I will structure this video. So let's begin my review of the 11. Yeah, the first scene of this story is a great start to showcase the 11 and what he did in the past, where the 7th Doctor defeated the 11, and I would love to see some prequel stories, or a prequel box set, or a monthly range trilogy with the 7th Doctor and the 11. So I think the 7th Doctor has been such a dark Doctor, and he faces big villains like Sutek, Fenric, he faces all the big guys, like the gods, and seeing the 7th Doctor and the 11 would be pretty good. We can all hope that, but we do know the 11 will be in Doom Coalition 2. But I think it would be nice to see the 7th Doctor and the 11 battle out a little bit. But if we don't, it doesn't really matter, because it's nice what we got here in this prologue. And yeah, I do like the final words of the 11 saying, "When I get out, it'll be like child's play." Yeah, right from the get-go, Matt Fitton has written and showcased the 11 extremely well. He feels extremely intimidating and really dangerous, even though he's behind bars. Feels like he can cause so much damage, even though he's just behind bars, where one of the characters is speaking to the 11. So it does feel like the 11 has all the power, even though he is trapped. Now, how the 11 works is extremely good. I love it where he keeps all his regenerations, the incarnations within his mind. It becomes so mental. When they all talk, they all start talking and arguing amongst each other. And that's how he becomes so insane and out of control. And all his different regenerations captures a different side of his character. Such as the 8 seems to disagree with a lot of them, and that's where all the arguing starts, because the 8 is so different from all of that. One saying, "Mercy, don't hurt me," seems to be rather of a wimp, a coward, and a harmless Time Lord, pretty much. Whereas the 4th mocks him, and he's a really dark and really demonic voice, which I really like. And there's other ones where one of them's completely crazy, like laughing, going nuts, and there's another one really funny. Just captures so many different styles of the 11, and I absolutely love it. Yeah, the 8th Doctor and Liv don't get into this 11 plot immediately. They're running away from, I believe, aggressive creatures attacking them, and they're somewhere else. So they take it like about 5 to 10 minutes, about 5 minutes, until they get into the actual story on Gallifrey. Yeah, it's got some nice nods and references to the Gallifrey series. I haven't listened to it. I should one of these days, as it's a range which really intrigues me. When Jago and Lightfoot is finished, then that's definitely on my mind. So you have such things like the CIA, which stands for the Celestial Intervention Agency, and that Romana was a president of Gallifrey, and that was the golden age of Gallifrey. So yeah, it's got some nice references to the Gallifrey series, and a lot of people would like that. Yeah, definitely the scenes of the 11 and Kiani is very good, as she's fascinated in criminology and wants to study and learn more about the 11 as well. He's one of the biggest criminals of the Time Lord race. Yeah, as I said, even though he's trapped, he feels extremely dangerous. And yeah, the 11 gets into the action quite quickly and escapes from his cell. And what he's doing is basically child's play, as he said when he was put in frozen animation when the 7th Doctor got him. Livchenko is a little bit brash in this story from the start of it, and pretty much all the way through it. But I guess she's like this as well. Lady Farina, the head of the CIA, is a bit brash and quite indignant too. So I guess she's really just sticking out for herself, and sometimes quite bossy to the Doctor also. But yeah, I actually do prefer Livchenko in Doom Coalition than Dark Ice. Not entirely sure why, but I just do, so it's a good thing. She definitely did improve from Dark Ice 4, and that's where I started loving Livchenko. Dark Ice 2 and 3, in the middle. Dark Ice 4, getting a lot better, like Livchenko. And then Doom Coalition, yeah, still like her. So, I like Livchenko. Yeah, when the 11 does escape, he does become very, very devious. There's always regenerations have talents of their own, how to plan their tactics and all that. Yeah, he's always very good to get a mile ahead of everyone else, including the Doctor, which actually frustrates him quite a lot. He just says he's had enough, and he starts to get very frustrated and annoyed. And yeah, the 11 is really good of being like 5 steps further than everyone else, a really good planner. And he gets into like action gear when these time grenades are being used to spawn creatures and monsters. And I love it where he watches all these creatures and monsters die from the Time Lords. He says, such chaos, so much death, and you can see that's absolutely nuts. And I've just noticed that the Doom Coalition has like a similar score to We Are the Daleks. Using knowledge, it's the same music person, the same music composer as We Are the Daleks, and I love that guy. He did Curse of Davros and all that, really good music, so it's nice to see him again. I can't remember his name, unfortunately. But yeah, you actually have the music score on what's that song? The Satanic Mill. Yeah, you have the music score on the Satanic Mill, so that's very good. I'm happy to see that, because it always annoys me when box sets don't offer that, but they offer it in this one, so I'm happy to see that. And I hope they do it for their other releases and not just a one-time thing. Another highlight of this is where the 11 does confront Livchenko, and their dialogue is very good. And Livchenko talks about facing the Daleks and that. And I love the 11 just laughs about it, just laughs at the Daleks, so there's nothing to him. And yeah, he talks about all the other species are nothing, but the Time Lords have so much powerful weaponry which can do catastrophic damage, and that's what he wants. Yeah, Matt Fitton did the right thing with the 11 of putting him 5 steps ahead and make the 11 in the situation in the winning state. And it feels like the Doctor's in the losing state, as the 11 is always in front of him all the time and he just can't reach him or beat him. That's the best way to showcase the villain right at the start, make him as good as possible. And yeah, of course the Doctor and the 11 do have a confrontation in this one, and he does become a little bit out of control with his incarnations, and the Doctor says we've met Grumpy, Dopey and Bashful, now just waited to see Sneezy to arrive. So much funny dialogue, and I love how he says, "Don't mock me, Doctor." Just some great dialogue and interactions between the two of them. Even though it's got some fun lines just in places, it's mainly serious storytelling here. Now to characters and performances, we have the 8th Doctor, the good old Paul McGann, great stuff from him of course. I love where he was written in the 3/4 mark with him getting frustrated with the 11 being 3 steps ahead. I quite like that. And the 7th Doctor was a nice addition to the start of the story. Again, I would quite like a prequel box set or a multi-range trilogy with the 7th Doctor and the 11. I think that would be pretty good. Next up is Livchenko, Nicola Walker, good stuff from her. Quite brash in some places. But yeah, I prefer Livchenko a lot more than, say, Dark Eyes 2 and Dark Eyes 3. The 11 is Mark Bonner, and he's just a fantastic voice actor. He's very versatile as he's doing different personalities of himself, like insane, crazy, harmless, scared, a coward like the 8, for example. I love how he's showcased in this one. Really well executed and well written. Voice acting was fantastic. Makes the other Time Lord villains look completely nothing, and he's extremely devious. So for supporting characters, we have Padrak, which is Robert Bathurst. Perhaps my favourite supporting character. He's quite fun in places, nice scenes with Livchenko, and he's the one who talks about Gallifrey's past and it being in the golden age when Romana was president. Like that sort of dialogue. Next one is Lady Farina, Caroline Lancashire. Very bossy and indignant character, but it makes sense because she is the head of the CIA, the Celestial Intervention Agency, so you expect that obviously. She tends to always disagree with the other characters and thinking she is the only one who would do right, and talks down to Kiani as not trusting her to free the 11 or that, but come on, you can't think that, she's so harmless. Next one is Kiani, which is Baffan Walker. Great interactions at the start with the 11. Really good scenes and a highlight of the story when interrogating the 11. Very devious from the 11. And yeah, that was a highlight. And Kiani was a good character. Very interested in criminology and the 11. So yeah, I quite like her. She's very likeable. Penultimate character is Castellan, which is Raman Tigaram. Not too much to do. What I remember, there wasn't a whole lot. The other ones like Kiani, Lady Farina and Padrak were doing the most. And didn't tie too heavily to the plot. I think it only had really one purpose. And then lastly we have the Captain, which is John Banks, a very versatile voice actor. Some nice little scenes and basically just a background character for the most part. So then, what is my final verdict on the 11? Well, it's a fantastic story, there's no surprise there. Matt Fitton has done another story which joins the ranks of Stage Fright and Criss Cross. He's been on a roll, and I can't wait for his other stories in 2016 coming up. I think they're going to follow the same routes with these 3 stories. How the villain was showcased is absolutely perfect. It's well paced, doesn't feel tedious or dragged out absolutely anywhere. And yeah, it's a great start for the set, and I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, so well done to Matt Fitton. And Mark Bonner as well, doing an absolutely outstanding performance as the 11. A really great villain. And yeah, unfortunately his build-up is now on a halt, as he isn't in the Red Lady or the Galileo Trap, and I'm going to discuss the build-up by there I've got quite a bit to discuss about that. But anyway, let's move on to the second story of the set, which is the Red Lady.
What do we do now?
Is that it? Is she gone?
She's right here. Can you hear that?
I think so.
What's happening?
You can't see her.
She's in the room.
So here we have the Red Lady. And yeah, this is very much the 8th Doctor entering the Hammer House of Horror universe. And yeah, like many, it seems to be a fan favourite from the set. It's divided really of the 11 and the Red Lady. That seems to be the area of favourites within the set. The other two, the Galileo Trap and the Satanic Mill, I haven't seen a lot of people praising them, especially to say that's their favourite from the set. And also it's by John Dorney, who is a very good writer, and him writing a creepy story. What can possibly go wrong? And yeah, furthermore, from the video trailer, I think that's where it put a lot of hype on this one. Now to the opening summary of the story from the events of the first story, the 11 has escaped, and the Doctor and Liv are tracking him down, and they land in London in the 1960s, and it introduces us to a new companion, which is Helen Sinclair. So that was the brief summary. Now to my in-depth review. Alright, now I'm going to discuss about this villain not being in the middle stories, as it can divide opinions. So yeah, he's not in the Red Lady because the Red Lady is the villain, but he isn't in the Galileo Trap. It doesn't feature the 11. Now some people like the sound of this and some people won't like the sound of this, as if he's not in all the stories, he can give the box set time to relax, calm down a little bit. We've had a big story at the start, just to calm down the villain a little bit and give something else a bit different. But then others will be on the other side saying, well, he's had all this build up and now it's on a long tedious pause until the final story, and in the middle doesn't have a lot of build up and it doesn't really feel like the villain is getting something he deserves. So yeah, it's something which can divide opinions, if you like the main villain to be in all the stories or not. Now I do sort of agree with this, with what people say. The villain needs to have the centre stage and be in all the stories at least, but I wouldn't say in the Red Lady, as there's quite a bit happening in this one and it'd be overcrowded if he was in the Red Lady. I don't really see him working in this one anyway, but in the Galileo Trap I think he needed to be in it because the build-up in the middle is pretty weak, and that's a shame, as, well, it's a bit similar to the build-up in Jago and Lightfoot Series 2. Gabriel Sanders was in the first story quite a lot, and in the middle, that's where the build-up is happening. Fantastic build-up's happening, and then he's in the final story. But with Doom Coalition, in the middle, it's not that good of build-up. So yeah, what's happening with the build-up of the 11, it's on a halt. A tedious halt. So I think the build-up could have been handled a little bit better. Or place him in the Galileo Trap. As I can see, he could work in that one, but not the Red Lady. Yeah, that's my opinions on the build-up of the set. Anyway, I got completely distracted. Let's move on to the Red Lady. Yeah, the intro to the Red Lady is seriously good. It tells us quite a bit about the concept of the Red Lady, which is truly terrifying. And that's why I class it to be quite a Hammer horror story. And I love how the Red Lady picks her foes and how to scare them and know when you're next. I just love the concept of it. I'm not going to tell you how the villain does that. That's something for you to find out because I find it truly terrifying. And that's the scariest thing I find about the Red Lady. Helen Sinclair enters the story very quickly with this professor. And on my first listen, I don't think Helen really won me over. I was thinking, no, I wasn't really sure. But on my second, I really liked her. And John Dorney has written the character seriously well balanced with confidence and sticking up for herself, so I quite like that about her. And she isn't really in a nice place of work and really getting pushed back. And she wants to have a stronger job placement, and she's only really an assistant, and she loves history, she's a historian. And all she wants is to improve and go up the ranks in her job, but they're not letting her. So she becomes a little bit brash and a bit angry. Although, even though I like Helen, she hasn't really shown a major purpose just yet. She's just leaving because the events of what happened in the Red Lady, and that's it. Not really a major purpose of sticking around, really, but maybe we will see that in Doom Coalition 2. She'll play more of a role rather than just sticking with the Doctor and Liv. It's got some nice references to some Dark Eye stories. It references A Life in the Day, so if you didn't get that reference when Liv was talking about her day in London with Martin, that was a reference to A Life in the Day. A very popular 8th Doctor story from Dark Eyes 4. And yeah, I like that reference because that was very much a story for Liv, and it's nice to reference that one. Yeah, when I look deeply in the story, I can see that John Dorney had an awful lot to do. Not only he needed to keep the scare factor, keep building up, that's what you need to do with a horror story or a creepy story, anything like that. That fear factor has to go up with the villain, has to keep building up. Introducing Helen, a completely new character and companion. As well, he's also thrown in quite funny dialogue and comedy into it, and it doesn't feel overpowering in the story. As when you do comedy too far in a horror story, I don't like that, as it just diminishes the scare factor of it. But no, he's done so much. He's balanced out the comedy and the fun dialogue. The build-up is really good, and Helen Sinclair's written very well. And yeah, we got some really nice classic Hammer horror moments. There's classic horror moments you love in all those good old 70s horror films, like breathing, creepy breathing down the phone, and someone get murdered when this other character, I forgot his name, but it might spring to my mind eventually. Oh yeah, Waters, that's his name, where he's listening to the phone and he witnesses a murder. And yeah, Waters' character gets quite a lot to do in this one, as he's the one who first experiences a murder by the Red Lady, who then breathes down the phone, which is very creepy. And now this is where the concept of the villain really comes into play, and Waters experiences this, and how the Red Lady takes its next victim. And it's joined together with really creepy music and background and sound design. It's really well integrated and very well edited. But that's Big Finish every single time anyway. And yeah, we have nice character interactions with the Doctor, Liv and Helen. Helen doesn't seem to like the Doctor right from the get-go, as Helen finds the Doctor quite, crazy, mad and over the top. As the Doctor says, well, I could do all these tablets in 5 seconds. And Helen doesn't believe it, and yeah, the Doctor reads the tablets in 5 seconds, and I just find it so funny. Yeah, when the story progresses, we can see what Waters' character is going through, as he can see the changes. Well, actually, no, I can't go into the concept. But he can see something, and no one else can. That's all I'm going to go into it. And they think he's ill or something, but he isn't. Waters isn't ill. He can actually see it happening, but the others can't, because Waters is the next victim. And he gets really frustrated with that, because he's actually not imagining it, it's real life what's happening to him. And yeah, it becomes very psychological, this story. Something a bit like The Crooked Man episode 2, where it goes really off the wall. I wouldn't say it goes off the wall, the Red Lady, but it becomes not really like, well, it's still creepy, but more psychological, messing with the mind. Yeah, it's grabbed some elements from The Crooked Man and integrated it with this story, and it works well. And yeah, what I like about the villain, the Red Lady, we don't really get the full picture of what is the Red Lady. A lot of things are unanswered about it. And it's really left to the imagination of the listener. And sometimes I do love it when Big Finish audios do this, as we don't need the answer to everything. We didn't have the full picture of the Valiard. I'm happy about that, and most people will be. It's best not to know, and I wish that was like that with the Eminence. I wouldn't like to know their origin, just keep it a secret and just never tell us. Also, I like it with the Well-Mannered War cliffhanger. I don't want it to get revealed. That's just personally me. That's why I think a Well-Mannered War is such a special audio. Some people liked it to be revealed. I personally am someone who doesn't want it to be revealed, but just left to the imagination of the listener. But it might happen, you never know. So yeah, it's left to the imagination of the listener what the Red Lady is, and this is what I describe the Red Lady to be. Yeah, this is how I would describe what the Red Lady is, as a demon can be anything it wants to, any shape or person, whatever it wants to be, and it chose to be a beautiful red lady, but inside it's pure evil and looks absolutely creepy as hell. So yeah, it's a type of demon which can have any shape or body, whatever it wants. And yeah, it picked a rare beautiful lady to attract its victims, as they say it's beautiful when they look at the red lady. So that's my that's what I think of what the red lady is. Now to characters and performances, starting off with the Doctor, and I love the 8th Doctor in this one, playing more an investigator role in this one, looking for the clues to find out more about the red lady. And he does bring some fun dialogue in this one. And you can see he's changed quite a lot from Dark Eyes, as he had no hope during Dark Eyes 1. He was a completely different person from the events of To the Death, but now he's got his hope and he's a bit more happy now. Even though he's having some fun moments, he's still quite serious to stop this red lady. Next up is Liv, and she has some good dialogue, nice reference to her life in the day, which I quite liked. Not sure which one I prefer, Liv or Helen, I don't know, I can't answer that question just yet. Next up is Helen Sinclair, the new companion Haiti Morhan. I really love her on my second listen, to be honest. Very well written in this one, and some nice performances from her, and a welcome addition to the set and the series. Now to supporting characters, and really there's only one, which is Walter Pritchard, which is David Yell, and yeah, really the only supporting characters. The other ones are background ones, pretty much, but I liked his character. He played a big part of the story, which was connected to the Red Lady plot and the concept of the monster, very creepy stuff. Yeah, I'm glad that it didn't have too many characters, because the story itself was doing so much. It would feel rather compacted and, you know, overcrowded. There'd be so much going on, and yeah, it was a good thing not to have the 11 in there, because I disagree whoever says they want the 11 in all 4 stories and the Red Lady, because it'd be so overcrowded it just won't work. But yeah, in the Galileo Trap, that's a completely different story, which I'll go into in due course. So then, what is my final verdict on the Red Lady? Well, it's my favourite from the set on my second listen. I adore it. It's absolutely fantastic. And well done to John Dorney. I really loved it on my second go. I loved it on my first go, but I loved it even more on my second go. And I prefer it over the 11 now. I loved it from start to finish, and it belongs with like the Hammer horror stories. And I give it a 9.5 out of 10. Now to the third story of the set, The Galileo Trap by Mark Platt.
This one's for me.
Now to my review of The Galileo Trap. And it was another story which was interested by many people by the video trailer being released on the Big Finish channel, and when more information was released. Unfortunately, this was the one I was least looking forward to, or the least interesting one out of the set for me. I know Mark Platt is a very good writer. He's done so many classics for Big Finish, Spare Parts, the Hinchcliffe stories, Ghost of Groucester, Devil's Armada. He's done a lot of good stories. I don't know why, but it was the least interesting one for me. So to the summary of the story. From the end of the Red Lady, the Doctor gets an incoming message from Galileo and can't really understand what it's saying because it's static and it's really bad quality, but he sort of worked it out, and it's like a message, like a help message. So yeah, the Doctor, Helen and Liv go and find Galileo, but from the title I think it's pretty obvious what happens. So that was the brief summary of the Galileo Trap. Now to my in-depth review. Now, with Helen being quite of an historian, this will be a great story for her, as she's going to a location filled with history and set in Florence. And she does get very overwhelmed by all this. And I don't get if people say that she's annoying when she does this, as would you be overwhelmed if you see someone you really like? Well, I'll be overwhelmed if I saw Patrick Troughton and I couldn't contain myself. Yeah, I like that she's so overwhelmed to see history, as she's so fascinated in it. I was thinking this is going to be quite a story for her. Unfortunately, it's not really the case, as it gets really focusing on these villain characters and Galileo and the Doctor. So that's unfortunate. I say this story does start off pretty slow, with little interesting things going on with this really weird and old character called Cleaver, and all these monsters about Florence. Although I wanted the story to speed up a little bit and get to Galileo, it took a really long time. What if the message was really important? They'd taken a really long time to find him. It's during about track 4 or 5 they meet Galileo. And yes, the pacing is all over the place. It's like a roller coaster. It goes up and down and up and down and up and down. It doesn't know what to do with the pacing. It's all over the place. Yeah, the main monster or villain or the story does get shown, and it's pretty predictable who it is. You can see it from a mile away. I'd say the reveal of the main villain, his true identity, happened far too quickly. I wanted all the Galileo stuff to be up front first, rather than just revealing this villain at first. I don't know, I just don't like the structure of it. And yeah, I can see the 11 easily working in this one. We know you have this other villain, who I think is just rather mediocre at best. Although, this story does have a good build-up to the Satanic Mill, so I give it that much. And the cliffhanger does lead into it, so yeah, that was dealt with and handled quite nicely. Yeah, this story is pretty much like fun in places and can be quite dark. And it does have its moments, but again, you know, it goes up and down. And I would say this is a standard Doctor Who story, and it's essentially made for setting up the final story of the set. The standalone story, what's happening here, it's okay really, it's just setting up the Satanic Mill, that's all which it's its purpose. Unfortunately, what I'm going to say is upsetting, but the Galileo Trap is unremarkable. I'm very surprised with Mark Platt on this one, as he's done so many classic stories. I knew that this one was going to be the least interesting one. Yeah, my estimations were correct, it's just unremarkable, that's the word which describes it. It does have its moments sometimes, some of the scenes are quite good, but it's not a Mark Platt classic by any means. Yeah, the villain of the story, the main guy, he was okay. I preferred the two dogs, Heracles and Brutus, to him. And that's not good, that isn't. Anyway, let's move on to something more positive. Let's talk about characters and performances. The brilliant, lovely McGann, the 8th Doctor. And yeah, he did great in this one. He doesn't really get into the action of this story. It's really, mainly, Liv taking the action front role. Yeah, the Doctor is with Galileo for the most part of it. Liv's getting in the action, and Helen, I love the scenes where she's looking around Florence and interested in being a historian, just looking around. I like that sort of stuff. That was quickly faded away. Anyway, next up as supporting characters, we have Galileo John Woodvine, who played the Marshal in the Armageddon Factor. Actually, I like that story, so yeah, that's quite good to see. Controversial what I said, but anyway, let's move on. Yeah, it's nice to see him, good voice acting from him. And for other supporting characters, nothing special. We have Cleaver by Harry Myers. Yeah, his dialogue was quite good. I liked his voice for the standard character. Then we have Virginia, who is the servant of Galileo. Some nice stuff, some nice dialogue. Nothing too much as a character. Then Cleaver by Gunnar Corfery, who was okay. There's something quite interesting about him. And we have some other characters who are minor roles or background characters. So then, what is my final verdict on the Galileo Trap? Yeah, it serves its purpose right, which is setting up this one quite well, but that's doing something good for the Satanic Mill, but it's not doing anything good as a standalone story. It's unremarkable for me. I don't find it a very good story. I don't even believe it's written by Mark Platt, because he written spare parts on all those wonderful stories, and then you have this. It's not a classic Mark Platt story by any means, absolutely not. It's got its moments, the pacing is all over the place, and it's just a standard story, nothing special about it, in my opinion, and in most people's opinions that is the case. It's unremarkable, that's the word which describes this story. I give it a 6 out of 10. I don't think it deserves a 7. I might be a little bit horrible with the rating, but I don't think it deserves a 7. Sometimes it mainly gets a 7 or an 8, but I think it's too high. I'm giving it a 6. So that was the Galileo Trap. Now moving on to the final story of the set by Edward Collier, The Satanic Mill.
Welcome.
Father Locke, the day has come for your ascension.
So now to my review of The Satanic Mill by Edward Collier, a brand new writer, writing the final story in a very big set. Now, this is a very odd choice, as, well, how Matt Fitton started out, he done a anthology release in the Recorded Times story, and John Dorney did a companion chronicle, and Ian Eddington recently did Shield of the Jotun. But why make a brand new writer do something this big, I don't really get. As it looks like Big Finish are putting a lot of faith into this writer, and he hasn't written a Big Finish story at all. I don't know what Edward Collier does, I've never heard of him. But yeah, I really like the sound of this story. It sounded quite bleak, and it's going to be quite epic. However, like the Galileo Trap, it hasn't got the best of opinions out there. Most people say this one's the least favourite out of the set. Now to the summary of the story. Now the back bio doesn't actually reveal too much of the story. It hides the main plot, so yeah, I agree. I'm not going to discuss too much about the summary. Go into it by yourself. But yeah, it follows on from the previous story, what happened there, when the Doctor, Liv and Helen land on a satellite, and that's where the plot begins. So then, let's begin my in-depth review. Yeah, the story starts off with a scene with the 11, and it's great to finally hear him after that tedious wait. I just wanted the 11 to be back. As I said, Jago and Lightfoot Series 2 did much better build-up for Sanders rather than the 11 in Doom Coalition. The middle needed more build-up, a lot more, because the wait for him was quite tedious. But I'm happy when we got the 11 back in action now, so I'm happy. Yeah, this story kind of reminds me of The King of Sontar a little bit, where the main villain is using slaves to complete his own task, and with these robots usually saying the same thing over and over again. It's a pretty basic plot, this one. It's just nothing creative, it's just a basic plot. Where the Doctor moves more forward into the satellite, he gets closer to the 11's trap. Oh yeah, we get some nice dialogue with Liv and Helen. They get split up, and the Doctor is doing something else, he's moving more forward into the satellite, and yeah, they get split up when they're in the line. And yeah, Liv and Helen, as I said, get some nice dialogue with Helen saying how Liv joined the TARDIS and that. Some nice background and all that. I like how Helen's a bit ambitious in what she wants to wish for. And she's quite a confident person, so yes, that's nice to see that. Not overconfident or anything like that, but just ambitious in the mind. And yeah, Liv talking about her past and like robophobia and all that, so that's quite nice. Yeah, as I said, Helen hasn't had a major purpose with this box set as of right now. Liv's had quite a bit to do, especially in Dark Eye. She's had a major purpose in that, and that's moved forward into Doom Coalition. But yeah, it took quite a while until Liv Chenka had a purpose in Dark Eyes, and we're just waiting for her to have a big purpose in Doom Coalition. It's too early for anything big to happen with her character, so it will be moved into Doom Coalition 2 or 3, where she will be playing a much bigger purpose than just sticking around and leaving London. Yeah, I'd say the story's a little bit bleak in places, and I love bleak stories. It's one of my favourite storytelling, as it just gets real gritty, and I just love that sort of stuff. With the slaves working non-stop and have a day life cycle. I'm not sure why they do have 1 day life cycle. I don't think that was explained. I might have missed something. But yeah, the people on the satellite, have like a 1 day life cycle to live, and then they get disposed of by the robots. And yeah, they don't know anything about fresh air or food, and they're only made to work. Oh, actually, that's probably the reason why, because they don't get no food and water, so they live that long. Yeah, that's probably the reason. I'm silly, I am. And yeah, it just goes to show that the 11 is quite barbaric and twisted. Yeah, the 11 is quite out of control in his incarnation, just keep popping out, and he can't control himself. And yeah, of course the Doctor and 11 have a showdown, and it's really good, it is. Really good. Not the ending scene, that's a little bit anticlimactic in my opinion. But the scenes with the Doctor and the 11 confront each other is really good when I listen to it a second time. Where the 8th Doctor is like begging for mercy not to harm Helen or Liv. And the 11 just laughs at him and mocks him and taunts him, so yeah, really good stuff there. honestly, I really like this story, and I prefer it a lot more on my second listen. That's a big surprise for many. But yeah, I like the Satanic Mill on my second listen. I was dreading to listen to it a second time, but I really like it. Yeah, for characters and performances, we have the Doctor. As I said, his best scenes are with the 11, that's the highlight of the story. Liv, who I prefer in Doom Coalition a lot more from Dark Eyes, she's improved as a character. And Helen, yeah, again, hasn't done a major purpose just yet. But still, I like her, and that'll be somewhere in Doom 2 or 3. The 11, who is well worth the wait. Yeah, again, it was quite tedious waiting for him, but it shows that he's a completely insane villain. I'm going to look forward to hearing him in Doom Coalition 2. And for supporting characters, we have Pain, which is Matthew Cotto. A nice supporting character with the Doctor, explain about the life cycle and the workers. And then 2 other ones by Ewan Bailey, who is Father Locke, and the Orbs, who I believe were the robots. Now, what is my final verdict on the Satanic Mill? Well, I like the story a lot more on my second listen. I think I fully engaged into the story on my second go. I might have been off trail on my first listen, because it's a pretty basic story, and it's nothing too over the top or anything like that. It's actually very easy to listen to. I don't know why I didn't like it on my first listen. Maybe I just wasn't connected to what was going on, and I just lost track. But always give someone a second shot, because I might have just dozed off and just completely lost interest, and I think that is what happened. But on my second listen, I enjoyed it, and I gave it a 7 out of 10. A good story. Could have been handled a bit better during the end, but I liked the story, and it gets a 7. So yeah, to recap, my rankings are: last place and the weakest story out of the set is the Galileo Trap for me, with a 6 out of 10. Very unremarkable in my opinion, not a classic Mark Platt story. Third place is, I'm going to say, the underrated The Satanic Mill. I like it. It's a good end for the set. Could have been handled a bit better in places, but still a good story nonetheless. Second place is The 11 by Mark Platt. A very strong story and a great start for the set. The 11 is very well showcased in this one. And first place is The Red Lady by John Dorney, a fantastic horror story. And introducing us to Helen Sinclair, John Dorney had a lot to do in this one. I gotta say it worked out fantastically, with a 9.5 out of 10. So then, what is my final verdict on Doom Coalition Series 1? Well, it is a magnificent box set, especially the first half is amazing, with the 11 and the Red Lady. Matt Fitton again is on a roll, and John Dorney has the strongest story within the set, the Red Lady. Just a nice, creepy story. It's a shame the second half didn't really live up to it. The Galileo Trap is unremarkable. The Satanic Mill is a good story, it's underrated. I don't class it as a terrible story, but it's a good one, but could be a lot better. There's still improvements it needs. And I would say it is giving Dark Eyes a run for its money. It's better than Dark Eyes 3 and 2, and it's on the same lines with Dark Eyes 4 in my opinion. Now I'm going to do something a bit different, which I'm starting with box set reviews. If I add all the 4 stories, it equals 40. If it's 4, 10 out of 10, so I'm going to rate the entire box set out of 40 of all the stories. So we've had a 9.5, a 9 out of 10, a 7 out of 10 and a 6 out of 10. If we add that all together, it equals 31.5 out of a possible 40, so that's the 4 marks it gets. And as for a box set, I'll rate it an 8.5 out of 10. A very good box set, and I very much recommend it. You don't need Dark Eyes to get into Doom Coalition, you could just go right to Doom if you want to. Doom Coalition 2 looks pretty impressive, and I like the line of writers, especially Matt Fitton doing the last story. That gives me a lot of hope. So thank you for watching my review of Doom Coalition 1. I hope you enjoyed the review, and I will see you in the next one for Saturday or Tuesday, depending on I have time, for Jago and Lightfoot and Strax, The Haunting. So see you in that review, goodbye, and have a good one.